Welcome to Rights and Remedies, the podcast where law, advocacy, and healing come together. I'm Alison Mahoney, your host, and a lawyer dedicated to fighting for the rights of survivors of domestic and sexual abuse, as well as children harmed by the child welfare system. Each week, we delve into legal battles and court cases, share powerful stories that demand change, and spotlight the cutting-edge practices that are helping victims on their journey to healing. So, if you're ready to dive into the intersection of advocacy and healing, subscribe to Rights and Remedies today. New episodes are released weekly, and we can't wait to have you join the conversation. Together, we can make a difference. All right, welcome back to Rights and Remedies. Thank you for being here today. Today is our guest, Allison Pierre. She is the founder and CEO of Innovative Prosecution Consulting, which she founded in 2019. Allison is an attorney and she practiced civil litigation, and she was also a prosecutor. Welcome, Allison. I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, same. So to start, tell us about your company. What is Innovative Prosecution Consulting and what do you do?
Sure. IPC, that's what I call it,
Mhm.
easier, but IPC is a data consulting firm. And what we do is we partner with prosecutor offices. What I do specifically is I have a data team from American University, and we work with prosecutor offices who want to implement any kind of data program. And that could be evaluating a treatment program that they have for drug offenders. It
Mhm.
could be updating their case management system, or if they want to do a public dashboard and showcase results to the community, that is the service we provide. And the crux of what we do is being a thought partner and a technical assistance partner for prosecutor offices.
Right. Right. Because with more data, and I mean, there's one thing to just collect data and then you have to analyze the data, but those two things combined, you can really evaluate whether something's working or not, if there's biases, that sort of thing, right?
Exactly. And with
Okay.
prosecutors, what we're still trying to acclimate to is collecting data about our charging decisions, bail decisions, sentencing recommendations, and plea offers. And the whole goal is to get lawyers and prosecutors acclimated to collecting their data, analyzing it so that they can ensure that they're being fair to the community members that they serve. And that
Right.
was the whole reason I wanted to do this work, because I was thinking, how do I grab hold of the attention of lawyers? Well, lawyers, we like facts and information.
Yep.
And data shows that we're being consistent with what
Right.
we're deciding that it impacts community members.
Right. Interesting. Do you have a sense of how many prosecutor offices across the country are relying on data now and doing this type of thing?
It's rare.
Isn't it?
I think out of the 2,400 offices, state prosecutor offices in the country that exist, there's probably less than 100 that have the capacity to analyze our data and figure out how they want to utilize it for thinking about if they want to create a dashboard or evaluate a diversion, which is a treatment program that they've created. It's something that's still, with prosecutors, it's still new,
Hmm.
even though the rest of the world and other sectors have used data to make decisions with attorneys. It's evolving, but it's happening.
Right. Yeah, and I'm just thinking in other sectors, it does seem like that's something that's kind of touted, like data-driven decision making. So it
It
makes sense to
is
me that
that
that's something that
term,
would be used in government sectors as well.
in that term, data-driven decision making, it's a term of art that you hear with nonprofits, foundations, government, and you certainly hear data-driven decision making in the private sector. And I think lawyers are now starting to get familiar with why and how to use data, whether it's a law firm or a government agency. But it's still something that lawyers are acclimating to, and more they're adopting it.
Yeah, interesting. So tell me more about your background. and what led you to founding your company?
When I graduated from law school, my love and desire was to be a prosecutor. I thought that was the most exciting job out there. It was like being a superhero, doing trials. I just thought, oh, this is amazing. It's theater in court. And I thought that's the job I want, to be a prosecutor. When I was graduating from law school, I became a prosecutor at the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office and really enjoyed it, and then went to the U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C. But then I had a moment of an awakening and realizing that instead of being a career prosecutor, I really want to make impact from a different vantage point. And I decided to create my data consulting firm because I really wanted to do something about reform.
Yeah.
Specifically, I wanted to see fair outcomes for all communities, and especially for communities of color. And for my community, because I'm African American, I really wanted to think about how I can ensure consistency and fairness with my community. So that's why I got on this new journey from thinking I was going to be a career prosecutor to being a business person,
Yeah.
to create a consulting firm and partnering with prosecutor offices.
Yeah. Well, and I think having the experience of working in a DA's office and being a prosecutor in a U.S. Attorney's office, it gives you a unique insight into the areas where data could be helpful rather than just being someone who's a total outsider and coming in and telling prosecutors what would be useful for them.
Yeah. And it helps because I knew that because I'm a former prosecutor, I also did complex commercial litigation in the private sector. So I know litigation. I know what the trial attorney life is, which is a
Yeah.
prosecutor or public defender. And we work with prosecutors, but we can also work with public defenders because it's all the same
Mm,
trial work. I knew that I would have more credibility because I've done the job.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's something that is unique about me. My background is the intersection of law, data, and tech.
hmm
And that gives me a little bit more trust between a client.
Yeah, no, that absolutely makes sense. And also, I completely understand what you said about like being in law school and wanting to be a prosecutor because I had the same feelings and started my career in the same way. So it's that resonated with me. So you just mentioned that you can also work with public defenders, so prosecutors, public defenders. Are there any other organizations that your company works with now?
We are working now with prosecutors, but we definitely can work with public defenders or nonprofits who
Mm,
are focused on criminal justice.
okay.
The reason why we are broadening out right now to beyond prosecutors is because my focus now is artificial intelligence
Ooh, okay.
in criminal justice. And it really is an ooh moment because artificial intelligence is already here. It's exploding and emerging.
Yeah.
It's part of our legal profession now because law firms have incorporated it into their workflow.
hmm
And I think the public sector attorneys, like prosecutors, public defenders, and other criminal justice advocates, they're also adopting AI tools, AI agents, which are assistants to help you be more effective. And what I see now is this incredible evolution of my career going into how I can help lawyers adopt AI into their jobs in the public sector, especially.
And probably, and I'm assuming in a way that is safe and secure, because you hear these crazy stories in the news and in the law journals every once in a while about attorneys like citing a case that doesn't exist in court documents and then getting in big trouble for that.
Mhm.
So, can you talk about some of the, let's end on a high note. So, first, some of the concerns with using AI within prosecutors' offices and then some of the ways that it can help.
I think the number one concern you already mentioned is accuracy and not wanting to rely on a technology for For instance, let's say I'm an attorney and I want to use an AI tool for legal research. You want to have faith that that case that you're getting is going to be accurate.
Yeah.
And accuracy and reliability is paramount as attorneys, especially when you're in court in front of a judge or you're writing a brief. You cannot do this in a cavalier way.
Yeah.
That's one concern with, I think, all lawyers. And then with prosecutors, I think that is a concern, the reliability, accuracy. And another concern with prosecutors is they may not have an internal person that knows the products they should buy, what AI tools are best for them. They don't have someone in-house that will say, use this particular software, which is, for instance, NICE, N-I-C. That's a company that produces an AI tool that can evaluate digital evidence.
Okay.
And there's a whole slew of other AI tools just for lawyers and some that are just for prosecutors. NICE, Axon, those are companies that produce software that can review digital evidence, which is body-worn camera footage from police officers, dash cam footage from police officers' cars, cell phones, all kinds of evidence that can be reviewed quickly. And I think the concern is with prosecutors and probably public defenders, they're concerned about if they have enough money to purchase the software, what software to purchase.
Yeah.
And then how do you get the lawyers in the office to use it?
Right. Well, yeah, that would be a shame to spend a lot of money on a product like that. Just to make this more concrete, can you explain like how would AI software be used to review evidence? Like what would it do? Would it generate a report? Like if it reviewed body cam footage or something, what would it actually be doing?
Axon, which is a software company, they created something called Draft One. And what that does is, let's say I'm a police officer and I have video footage of an arrest. Draft One could take that video footage and summarize it into a police report about what happened.
Got it.
And then the officer reads that report to make sure it's accurate.
Got it. Got it. Which in areas that have very hot, like where police departments are completely overwhelmed and busy, that could save a lot of time. Because I remember from my days as a prosecutor hearing from officers that they spent an inordinate amount of time doing paperwork. And I guess same thing as a DA, at least the types of offices that you and I were in, they're so busy and overwhelmed. And so taking some of that work off of people's plates, I could see where that would be helpful. Is there a concern about bias at all if AI is analyzing data?
Absolutely. There's a concern, I think, with public defenders and prosecutors about bias. Now, I think that comes into play when you have an AI tool. Let's say it's a situation where you're in court and a judge could be using it to figure out who to release and who to hold if the person's been arrested and they're waiting for the next court date. And the judge may be looking at using an AI tool that's trying to predict which defendants have a likelihood of committing another crime if they get released. Those kinds of things are based on, could be biased information. And I think with any software, whether a judge is using it, a lawyer is using it, there are ways to insert guardrails, check to see if there's bias in the algorithm. Now, I'm not an expert in terms of that, but I do know that any kind of software needs to have privacy guardrails, security guardrails, and then bias protections, and at least asking the questions. Is there a bias in this algorithm that we're using for this AI agent?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. So you need someone then also who can do that type of assessment at regular intervals to make sure that things are on
Let's say
track.
I'm working with the prosecutor's office. I would be the person asking if we're working with Salesforce, which is a large tech company that produces AI technology and agents. I would be wondering and asking those questions about what are the privacy protections so the data is secure. and what data is going to be utilized, how is there bias, how can we mitigate some of these concerns. There has to be a person who knows enough about Salesforce and knows enough about the prosecutor job to be the intermediary to say, we need these three tools to do X at a prosecutor's office, and here are the protections we're implementing.
Hmm.
And that's where I come in.
I see. So are prosecutors' offices like launching pilots of this, or do they just integrate it into their office and kind of like work out the kinks as they go?
I think it's more the latter. I think it's integrating, meaning having a vendor come into the office, and maybe the vendor's Axon or NICE or something else, or JusticeTech. JusticeTech just works with public defenders. And let's use JusticeTech as an example. They work exclusively with public defender offices, and they're a nonprofit, and their AI tool reviews hours, maybe 30 hours, for instance, of digital evidence within minutes.
Wow.
And that means that public defender, if they're set for trial for a murder trial, they can go over things much quicker.
Okay.
Plus, they can find things in the 30 hours of digital evidence that could help their client.
Hmm.
And I
It's
think,
fascinating.
yeah,
I mean, it's going to completely transform the practice of law. Yeah.
I view it as an AI agent, which is just think of that as a super smart paralegal
Hmm.
that you have given instructions to, and you know the data set that they're utilizing. You're just using them to do your job better as a prosecutor, public defender, or if you're working for Department of Transportation, you're chief of staff and you're an attorney, and you're that kind of role.
Yeah.
That's how I view AI in terms of how it gets incorporated as a co-pilot, a helper.
Right. Right. Right.
I
Right.
look to the attorneys to be the driver.
Hmm. Hmm. I like that. I want to talk a bit about privacy. So, one thing that I've heard in talks about AI is that, and I think people are becoming more and more aware of this now, like if you put something in Chat GPT, for instance, it's not like a closed system. You're putting that information out there, and then that data is no longer private, or that information is no longer private, and it makes, I mean, you have to be, what I'm trying to say is you have to be careful about what you are putting into certain platforms. With the ones that you're talking about, are they closed systems where it's not being released, that data or the inputs aren't being released outside of that prosecutor's office, for instance, or that public defender's office? Or is it being shared with other prosecutor and public defender's offices to make the AI smarter?
Understood. My understanding is these software companies, NICE, Axon, JusticeTech, Relativity, there's Thomson Reuters Clear,
Mhm.
they're all companies that customize what they're going to do for the client, whether it's Department of Justice, Prosecutor's Office, Public
Okay.
Defender, in a closed system that's not shared publicly. And the whole rationale is these are state and federal agencies that cannot have their data floating around. So there has to be security as to who has access to the data, and then that it's closed, meaning if the office wants to look at their digital evidence, if you're the prosecutor's office in a small county, you want to look at your body on camera digital evidence, that's not going to be disclosed to
Okay.
the community.
Yeah, that's helpful to know. And I mean, it seems like it would be very important for those offices to make sure that everything's secure, given the sensitive information that they have, not only about defendants, but about victims as well. So I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about criminal justice reform on a broader scale. So you started your company in 2019. We've seen a lot of shifts in this space over, I mean, certainly over the last 5 years, but also over the last decade. And so I'm just curious, as someone who's been working in this space, what has that been like? What's your experience been?
It's been exhilarating.
Yeah.
But I've also come to a sage perspective that criminal justice reform goes in stages,
Yeah.
meaning there's transformational progress and then there's some setbacks.
Hmm.
I think the net overall result is I see that there is progress, and
Hmm.
I know that it's a long journey with lots of twists and turns.
Yeah.
I am committed to doing this kind of work. And I think what I've done is change my focus into AI because I know that right now, I think our country and communities are thinking about what it is, and then how do you bring AI into criminal justice as a tool for good?
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's what I'm thinking about more than anything else. How do we use, as criminal justice practitioners, AI for good? And an example would be if you're a public defender and you have 30 felony cases and a few on for trial, and you are trying to get through what you're hoping would be some evidence that would help you win your case, and you discover some police misconduct in the digital evidence,
Hmm.
you would use that and be able to get to it faster.
Yeah.
And that's an example of AI for good because we don't want police misconduct. We want
Hmm.
fair outcomes.
Hmm.
And with criminal justice as a reform as a whole, I am still committed to it and will always be. And I
Yeah.
think for me, the strategy now is just focusing on how artificial intelligence can be a tool and data literacy, because I know that that's where we are right now in our country. And that's the future too. So I want to be where the future is leading me and not be
Yeah.
left behind. And I think all of us as lawyers need to think, what is the evolution of our work now and for the future?
You have such a long view, which I think is so powerful. It allows you to have or to keep a positive perspective and to kind of weather the ups and downs. Is that something that you've developed more since being an entrepreneur? Do you think that's always been something that has been like an attribute that you have?
Well, thank you.
Yeah, of course. It's, I mean, just listening to you talk about it, it's so impressive.
I sometimes forget it's an attribute. It is. And I think it's because part of it is being an entrepreneur. You have to be adaptable.
Yeah.
But the bigger reason I'm like this way is because it's part of my heritage, being
Mhm.
an African American woman in my community.
Mhm.
Resilience and strength is who I am. It's just embedded in me.
Yeah.
Also, the other side to resilience and strength for me is joy and passion.
Mhm.
But when I feel as though there's some setbacks, that means I need to evolve and pivot to how I can make impact. And for me, I feel that's looking at artificial intelligence, how it can be used for good with lawyers in the public sector, with
Yeah.
prosecutors, defense attorneys. And I am excited about it because I really love the idea of being on the cutting edge of something. And
Mhm.
I love innovation. I think it's just
Yeah.
the creativity about innovation really is, I think it's special.
Yeah. Yeah. I understand what you're saying. And we are at such an interesting time right now. I heard someone compare AI to like the invention of the light bulb, that it's that big and transformative. And so I think learning as much about it as possible and learning how to use it for good and as a tool instead of something to be afraid of, um, is important.
It
So,
is. And also as attorneys, I know our profession has been a cornerstone of our democracy, our Constitution, and I love the values that we have as attorneys.
mhm.
What I'm interested in is taking all of that and just incorporating a little technology to keep moving forward.
Uh, that's funny. Yeah, lawyers can be resistant to change sometimes, as you know. Well, Allison, thank you so much for being here today and for telling us about your company and all the important work that you're doing. For listeners who are interested in learning more or who might know a prosecutor's office, public defender's office, or nonprofit in the criminal justice space who could use your services, where can people get in touch with you? Where can they go to learn more?
Sure. Our website is reformagents.com. It's www.reformagents.com, all one word, reformagents.com. And then when you go there, you'll see my email. You can email me directly, and I'm pretty sure you'll be able to find it very quickly. Just email me. I'm absolutely interested in making new partnerships. So feel free to go to the website, reformagents.com, email me at acp@pierrelegal.com, acp@pierrelegal.com. And I look forward to meeting anyone who wants to talk more about this work.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Allison. And,
Thank you.
and thank you everyone for listening. Thank you for joining us on Rights and Remedies. I hope today's episode gave you valuable insights into the legal issues facing victims and the pathways to healing. Remember, you're not alone in this journey. Whether you're a survivor, an advocate, or someone looking to learn more, we're here to support and empower you. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with others. You can also follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn at ALM Law LLC for updates, resources, and more. Until next time, take care and remember that together we can make a difference.